Oh, baby, bonjour. It is time for the RotoWire Rundown. I am Keith Stewart from Read the Line. I am coming to you live from Royal Montreal Golf Club, north of the border. And yes, RotoWire fans, I have the triumvirate with me. Of course, it's a special event, so it's time for a special RotoWire Rundown. You haven't seen Len and I in a couple weeks, so there's been a lot of buildup. But you know what? President's Cup only happens once every 2 years, so we had to bring back Ryan Poole. Ryan Poole, how are you this morning?
Hey, what's up, guys? Hope you're ready for some hot takes.
And Ryan Andrade, how hot are your takes this morning?
Well, probably not as spicy as that now that he's mentioned it right off the top, but we'll see. I'm excited to get into everything.
And we know one thing's for sure. There's no man that's hotter than Mr. Len Hochberg. Len, my usual partner in crime, how are you this morning out there in L.A.?
Little sleepy, waking up, but raring to go. You guys have got me going backstage already, so here we go. Hey,
it doesn't take much to get you fired up, speaking of which, hey, how about the President's Cup, right? This is the 15th edition, Len. Let's you and I talk about this a little bit. Let's paint the stage for the Ryans before we get into all the betting and DFS talk and maybe some of the storylines that we're going to go over this week. But for you and me, Len, let's talk about the history of the President's Cup. In your opinion, how did all of this thing come together, and where do you think we are right now?
Well, I guess it came together with the PGA Tour and wanted, one of these cups of their own, and they didn't have the Ryder Cup, and they're officially not part of the Ryder Cup, but they are. They run the President's Cup pretty much. Yeah, we've had it now. It's been, it's pretty entrenched. It's no longer new. It's been around for 14 editions. And, unfortunately for people who want to see competition and all of that, it's the United States has won 12 and the internationals have won only one, and there's been one tie. But I do think there's a silver lining there, or at least a little underlying hope for the internationals. It's been a bit closer, especially when the internationals are on the road, or the home team. Excuse me, when the internationals are the home team.
You know what? When you reference the 14 previous ones, and the U.S. has a 12-1-1 record, but the one loss was in Australia, and the one tie was in South Africa. So, Len, you make a great point there, and there's a couple things about the President's Cup, and you mentioned the Ryder Cup briefly there for a second, but I kind of like the format of this event. And I think that they did a good job of distinguishing it from just a plain old Ryder Cup, and it just wasn't another team event on an off Ryder Cup year. First of all, they included the whole globe. But really, when it comes down to the format, instead of jamming it all into a couple of days, they go over 4 days. So just like a regular golf tournament, we're going to get started on Thursday afternoon with 5 4-ball matches. Now, 4-ball, it's easy to understand. That means there's 4 balls in play. There'll be 2 players from the American side. There'll be 2 players from the international side. Low score from either team wins the hole. If they tie, they move on. But whoever wins the most holes with the least amount of holes left, then they win that match and they get a point. Well, they're going to come back on Friday and they're going to do 5 foursomes matches. Now, foursomes gets a little complicated. It's better known as alternate shot. So if, let's say, Len and I are partners, he'll take the odd holes, I'll take the even holes, and then we alternate from there, hitting off the tee when it's our turn. The low team score wins the hole, and of course it's match play. We move on, and then if you have more holes that you're up versus the number of holes that are left, you win that point. Then on Saturday, we're going to do both. We're going to do 4 4-ball match. Oh, say that 3 times fast. 4 4-ball matches in the morning, 4 foursomes matches in the afternoon, and then Sunday the competition will close with the traditional 12 singles matches. So they spread it out a little bit, and they include the globe. And the third thing, and I know you guys love this too, is that when they do the pairings, they do it like a snake draft, almost like fantasy football, right? You know what the other team is picking. So when you put up a twosome, say it's Xander and Patrick, then, the international team, Mike Weir, the captain there, he can come back with the team that he wants to match up with them the most. And then when you come down to the Sunday signals, we tend to get a lot of matchups that we want to see. We get to see the guys that are playing the best against the best in the world. And I think that makes it a lot of fun. We are back at Royal Montreal. So, Len, give us a little breakdown on Royal Montreal Golf Club. The President's Cup was here in 2007. And for the 30th anniversary, we're back here in 2024.
Yeah, we have had the President's Cup here once before, 2007, as you mentioned, and the United States won that by 5 points. We've also seen Royal Montreal a number of times in the Canadian Open. Unfortunately, not since 2014. So it's been a long time since we've seen this course. I've gone and looked at video and checked out the flyover video on the website. You know, it's a roughly 7,300 yards for a par 70. That's not short for a par 70. I think that's sort of bordering on long. So looking at the course, the fairways are very narrow, a lot of parkland, a lot of trees, narrow fairways. So I think we really have to balance, the golfers will really have to balance distance and accuracy. It's not one or the other. I think you're going to have to lean a little bit toward accuracy here because of the trees, the narrow fairways, strategically placed fairway bunkers. The greens are small, and they're going to have some long iron shots coming in. And the greens have multi-levels, and the greens have are protected again by bunkers. So I think it doesn't maybe look like it's all that tough, but I think there's a lot of nuance to this course that will create difficulty for the golfers. There is no water on the front. There is a lot of water on the back. 6 holes of the 9 on the back, including the final 5, have water. So if we can get deep in matches, we could see some interesting swings here. So I think it's going to be a good test for these guys. And of course, I think it will, the setup will favor the internationals as best as they can do that.
12 international players, captained by Canadian Mike Weir. He also played the 2007 President's Cup here. And then we have 12 American players, captained by Jim Furyk. He played here as well. The breakdown on the skill set was great there, Len. One place I want to touch upon is that when I go back to those 07 matches, or I go back to those editions of the Canadian Open, the people that played well here catch my attention. So in the 07 President's Cup, the leading point winner on the U.S. side, not Tiger Woods, not Phil Mickelson, it was David Toms. And second to him was Scott Verplank. What's interesting about Verplank is that Verplank actually won one of those Canadian Opens hosted here at Royal Montreal. Another winner there, Tim Clark. Another winner, Steve Jones, won here the same year he won the U.S. Open. So when it comes to power and accuracy, I might disagree with you a little bit. I might lean a little bit more on accuracy and hitting these 5,000 square foot on average size greens, which is a little bit small. On the international side back in 07, Weir led the charge with 3.5 points for his side. Of course, the only Canadian player on the team that year, the 1 point he got on Sunday, they'll be talking about till the end of time, where he beat Tiger Woods in a head-to-head matchup, and Ernie Els was second. Now, you look at those guys that were the leading point getters back then in this very interesting format of match play. It seems like hitting the fairway and hitting the greens, those style players are really well rewarded here. So I think that's the type of players we need to look towards when we get into the DFS and the betting discussion today. But before we go there, we got to talk about some storylines, and we got to get the Ryans involved here. So Ryan Andrade, first off, a lot of people talk about the record, the U.S. 12-1-1, right? A lot of people don't remember. I mean, Len remembers this, but you go back to the 1920s and 30s and 40s. When you talk about the Ryder Cup, the U.S. won 23 of the first 25 Ryder Cups, and I think the Ryder Cup's doing all right today. Does the international team, do they have to win this year to make the President's Cup a bigger deal, or do you feel like the President's Cup is a big deal already?
Well, I know one thing. Don't ask Jim Furyk that question, because he'll probably give you a few F-bombs on it. So, no.
I did see that.
Do they need to win it this year? I don't know. I mean, like I think it's definitely not the Ryder Cup as far as like the buildup and the excitement for it, I would say. But at the same time, the golf world is starved of team golf, and I think we love team golf. And no matter what it looks like, when we get to see some of our favorite players competing for their country and playing together, and different than your typical 72-hole stroke play event, I think that's always welcome. And I think whether it's this year, whether it's 2 years, however many years from now that the internationals win, they're going to win at some point. I mean, they've come very close recently, especially the last 2 times that the International is hosted. So I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think if you look at it from one perspective, it would be absolutely huge for the Internationals to win one, but at the same time, it'd be devastating for the U.S. to go into the Ryder Cup after they lost it last year, off a loss in the President's Cup as well. That would put a ton of pressure on Keegan Bradley, and we'll just see how it goes this week.
I tell you, the build-up to Bethpage and the Ryder Cup next year probably doesn't need a U.S. loss this year. I mean, could you imagine the pressure and anxiety going into that? That's a really good point. Ryan Poole, speaking of, these team matches, we seem to have set ourselves in this format where half the team gets on points and the other half of the team gets selected by the captains. Captain Weir, Captain Furyk, they both picked 6 guys for their side roughly a month ago. In your opinion, how did they do?
Well, I think Mike Weir did a good job. I think his choices were probably a little bit easier. Mackenzie Hughes was maybe the debatable choice. They left Cameron Davis off. They left, Canadian Nick Taylor off. But Hughes is a very good golfer. He's the best short game player in the world, in my opinion. So I think Weir did a fine job. I don't understand the point of captain's picks if you're just going to go 7 through 12. Like, at that point, let's just not have captain's picks and just pick the 12 guys. I alluded to this in our Tour Championship podcast, but I don't understand how Max Homa was picked for this team. I like Max as much as the next guy, but he just had a really bad summer. And 2 weeks ago, he teed it up in Napa, a place he's won 2 of the last 3 years. He missed the cut. I don't know what kind of value he gives you this week. If it was me and I was a captain and I had him on this team, I would sit him until singles. And they had good options. Like, Justin Thomas deserved to be on this team. I don't really understand how he made the team last year and missed the team this year, considering how much better he's played this year. You look at what Billy Horschel just did across the pond, looking down Rory and beating him. They had other options. I think Brian Harman was a surprising pick in many people's eyes, just because he didn't have the same 2024 that he had in 2023. Look, to me, it just comes down to pick the best guys that give you the best chance of winning this team competition. And Max Homa does not give you the best team competition. I hate to drag him down so much here and I get it. He went 4-0 last time in the President's Cup, but that really shouldn't factor in that much. Had he been playing how he currently is 2 years ago, he would not have gone 4-0. So to me, that's irrelevant. If you're 19th in points, but you're playing well enough, you should get in. If you're 7th in points and you're not playing well, you shouldn't get in. So, at this point, it's let's just go back to only having 2 or 3 captain's picks.
You know what? I definitely agree with that. I think 6 is too many. It sounds like the other guys on the panel feel the same way, and there are also some people that had, say I poked and prodded you a little bit more and I said, hey, Ryan, who would you replace Max with? Who, besides Justin Thomas? You might have said somebody like, I don't know, the U.S. Open champion, Bryson DeChambeau. And you talk about whether it's the Ryder Cup in Rome or it's a President's Cup here, golf always tends to be stuck in their ways. So Max Homa's 7-1-1 and 2 appearances, 1 in a Ryder Cup and 1 in a President's Cup. So we just automatically pick him, even though he can't hit the broadside of a barn with his driver. I'm with you 100%. And I think that one of the ways maybe the tour can actually help themselves in a PR point of view, maybe was to allow live players in all of this. Where do you stand on that, Len Hochberg? Should live guys be included in the President's Cup? And do you think that'll help or hurt the situation that we're currently in, which seems like it's going nowhere?
Well, not to sidestep the question, but it really doesn't even matter what I think about live in this instance. The difference between the Ryder Cup and the President's Cup is the PGA Tour. And the PGA Tour runs the President's Cup. It really doesn't have a direct input in the Ryder Cup. They have their footprint everywhere in golf. We know that. But they are really oversee the President's Cup. And, as long as LIV and the PGA Tour and LIV players are not PGA Tour members, they are not going to be able to get to play. And that's, it's the same for the international team. Cam Smith not here. Joaquin Neiman not here. Yeah, it would be both teams would be much stronger with adding 2 or 3 LIV players each. So it would be nice to see. And as far as the team competition, I know that LIV supporters will point to this if this week is successful, or even if not, that there is, and Ryan had mentioned the hunger, the thirst for team golf. And we do like this format. We do like team golf. But I would submit that one of the things that we really like about it is that we see it only once a year. If we saw it a lot, it would not be that big a deal. If we saw this 3 or 4 of these team competitions a year, it would not get the ratings. It would not get the buildup. We wouldn't have a 4-box here. There are a number of factors at play here, but I don't think we're going to see the LIV players until there is an agreement between the PGA Tour and LIV. I think that's a no-brainer. And, so it might be the next President's Cup. It might be the one after that.
Well, I'm not going to hold my breath. And I had to check on something. Did you say LIV supporters, plural? I'm just wondering about that. All right.
I've heard.
I wanted to get you to smile before I put you on the spot again. Okay, we got to break down DFS plays. Let's go there before we go into all the prop bets and who's going to win, which side will win. And Len, you are the DFS guru. And when it comes to this week, it's somewhat different than it is on a normal PGA Tour week where we just, yes, the guys are priced out very similarly, but the rules have changed, right? So for everyone that's watching this, whether live or taped, make sure that they understand that who they're choosing this week, the scoring's different, right? Like, break it down for us.
Well, one of the big things that's different is we don't know how much everyone is going to play. First of all, we have 5 different rounds, Thursday, Friday, 2 Saturdays, and a Sunday. And everything is collectively added up for the week. So some guys Scotty Scheffler may play 5 matches, where someone else, Brian Harman or whoever, might play 3 matches. So one of the things to do, and one of the difficult things to do, is try to identify who's going to play the most, because that will give you, the most built-in points right there. But specific to the actual rules and regulations for DraftKings games, every game that they have will be in what's called captain's mode. I'm sure a lot of people will know what I'm talking about, but I'll explain it for those who different. You need to designate a captain for your lineup and then pick 5 other guys. It is not a ceremonial pick like a lot of captains' picks in golf. Whoever you pick as your captain, you will get 1.5 times whatever points he accrues during the tournament. But the downside, the flip side of that, is he will cost you 1.5 times of his DraftKings price. Scotty Scheffler in the 11s. If you want to make him your captain, it would be into the 17s. Not doing the math off the top of my head. So if you take Scotty Scheffler and you make him your captain at 17 something, that's about 35% of your budget right there. It's an enormous amount. Scoring wise, not birdies and bogeys, it's holes won. Holes won, you get 3 points if you or your team win a hole. Holes that are halved get 3/4 of a point. Holes that are lost lose 3/4 of a point. There are also bonuses for consecutive holes won, matches won, holes not played if you beat somebody quickly. It's all in my article on RotoWire, my DFS DraftKings preview. You can check it out there. But those are some of the big bullet points there. So in some ways, it's the most challenging week, especially because we don't know how much somebody is going to play. And when we get into those low 6,000s, 5,000s, even guys into the 4,000s, we've got to try and figure out who's going to play the most matches.
Well, like you said, Len, we don't know that, but we do know who is at the top of the board. So Ryan Andrade, let's look at the top plays, the players that cost the most. Maybe give us a captain's selection of your own, but break down the top of the DFS board for us.
Yeah, I was going through this a lot, and the guy I really like as a captain is Sanjay M. If you make him a captain, he's $13,200, which is certainly a big discount over the 17,000 from Scotty, the 16,000 from Xander.
Yeah.
And the big thing that we're all trying to figure out here is maximizing the number of sessions each player plays in. And Sanjay M has played all 5 President's Cup sessions, the last 2 President's Cup. So you could probably safely assume that he's going to be out there again, especially since he's been in such great form. 11 top 12 finishes in his last 15 starts. I mean, the guy has really no weaknesses at all and makes a ton of birdies. You can throw him out there and 4-ball, alternate shot. Like, it really doesn't matter. And it really doesn't even matter who you put him with. Like, he's just that solid of a player. So that's a guy I'd really look at. Some other, options that are higher up there that I really like are, Sam Burns from the American side. He played in all 5 sessions in the President's Cup last year. Didn't go as great as he would hoped playing with Scotty Scheffler, but there's a good chance that Scotty's going to end up playing in all 5. You don't really want to sit, the best player in the world once, and he's probably the most likely guy to get teamed with him. So, and then you got a big discount off him. He's almost 3,000 less than Scotty, and they're going to be playing in a lot of the same matches together. And on top of that, he's just a phenomenal putter, and he's gained on approach in 5 straight times. So those would be 2 guys I would sort of look at on each side towards the top of the board.
All right, thanks for that, Ryan Poole. How about that on the bottom side of the board, the value picks, right? Where do you see value on this DFS chart? And maybe a possible pairing or two, too. Like, Ryan Andrade brings up a great point there where you talk about looking into who might play with whom in order to try to accrue more points in holes 1.
Yeah, definitely. If you know for sure who's going to play with who, the good thing is that we'll find out the Thursday matches, and so we can adjust from there. A couple of guys that I had written down as values, Russell Henley at 5,000 is just a really cheap price for a guy that's playing, like a borderline top 10 player in the world. It's crazy. He's 35, and this is his first, Ryder or President's Cup. Keith, you talked about, Henley being a great foursomes fit in our Tour Championship podcast. So you have to think he's going to play both of those. And then, with the format being 4 balls first, we'll find out if he's going to play right away. And so if he is playing Thursday, really good chance he plays at least 4 times. And then going to the international side, I'm looking at Corey Connors at 5,600. I think people might shy away from him because he went 0-4 in his first President's Cup back in 2022. But it's a different time. Now he's going to his home country. This should be a better course fit than Quail Hollow was. And he's a guy that should be well suited for both formats. Len talked about a combination of driving distance and accuracy is important here. And Connors definitely does that. Very good approach player. So those are a couple of the cheap guys that I think you can fit in your lineup. Especially with the captains, if you're gonna spend up, on Xander, Scheffler in your captain spot, you're gonna have to find some of these guys in the 5K, even 4K range into your lineup.
I mean, you bring up a great point about Thursday. We'll get the pairings out before the lineups have to get locked. And you really have to pay attention to how many times that you think somebody might play. And that's part of the whole predictive process. Now, speaking of predictions, let's shift gears. Let's have some fun with a couple of prop bets this week. The first place I'm going to go is Team USA. Got it here on my sleeve. There we go. Proud supporter up here in Canada of the American side. So you guys will be happy to know I'm waving the stars and stripes up here. But when it comes to waving the stars and stripes, I'm going to start with you, Ryan Andrade. Who do you think will be the USA MVP and earn the most points?
I would probably go with Xander Schauffele. just because I think, obviously there's a very good chance he's going to play in every session. And I think another big thing is, when you look at, these sort of competitions is putting. And really, a lot of times it comes down to which team is making the most putts. And I think Xander Schauffele, from a strokes game perspective, is pretty much just as good of a putter as he is a ball striker, and he's an incredible ball striker. And so I think, and especially if you look at, Scotty, who has, slightly better odds than him, he didn't play good at the last President's Cup. He didn't play good at the Ryder Cup last year. And, I'm sure he wants to make up for that. But at the same time, Xander he's been so solid, and especially him and Cantlay together have been a great pairing. So I think Xander has a great shot at getting, 4, maybe even 5 points this week.
Len Hochberg, who's going to be the Stars and Stripes guy this week?
It's interesting. I saw that, DraftKings has in the sports book, they have odds on which player will have the most points for the entire point. You can bet the U.S. side, you can bet the international side, you can bet overall. And then I saw that Sam Burns was only plus 1,100. And then, it took me a while. I'm a little slow on this, but the reason he's so favorable is because he's going to be playing with Scotty Scheffler, most likely. So that automatically brings his odds down. So let's say he plays 3 or 4 matches with Scotty Scheffler, and then he goes out and he'll have play singles and stuff. So I don't know if Sam Burns is going to have the most, but I think that you can sort of piggyback on Scotty Scheffler and almost get Scotty Scheffler's game at double the odds by going with Sam Burns. So you can, there are little things like that to look at in this format and this setup that you can really use to your advantage. On the international side, are we not up to the international? I'll throw it over to you. I think we're waiting on the internationals.
All right, pump the brakes, Len. I got to get to Ryan Poole, and maybe I'll throw out a Team USA pick as well. But Ryan Poole, USA MVP, who we got?
Yeah, mine is quick. Ditto everything Ryan Andrade said. I have Xander Schauffele at plus 450. I think if you wanted to, you could pivot to Cantlay at plus 650, since they're likely to play together a lot.
So I'm with you, Ryan Poole. For all the reasons you listed, Xander Schauffele sounds great. But if Patrick Cantlay should play with him 4 times and then play a singles match, I'm going to take him at plus 650 rather than Xander at plus 450. There's better value there. And the fact of the matter is that you got to take into account how the President's Cup pairings are done. As a team, they're going to get one of the better teams. But when you come into Sunday singles, Xander's going to get one of the best players across the board. On the international side, he's going to get a Hideki, or he's going to get a Tom Kim, or he's going to get a Sung Jae Im. And Patrick might slip through the radar and be able to get himself 5 points with maybe somebody in the middle of their pack from a singles standpoint. So I'm going to go with Patrick Cantlay as far as the USA points leader. On the international side, I'm going to go with Hideki at plus 650. I think that we all forget really quick that Hideki just won a playoff event. Now, I know he went to the next event. He was 1 shot off the lead and he left, but, the guy's still playing great golf. And with all the attention that's on Tom Kim from last time, or Sung Jae Im playing, having one of the few guys on their team that actually has a winning record in the President's Cup, I think Hideki, at his short game and his ability to ball strike around this place, this par 70, Hideki's a really good par 70 golfer. I think at plus 650 on the international side, most points, makes a lot of sense. Len Hochberg, you were chomping at the bit for the international pick. Who do you have?
Yeah, I'm looking at 2 guys. There are 2 guys who have winning records in the President's Cup are Sung Jae Im and Siwoo Kim. And Ryan talked earlier about Sung Jae Im. He very likely will play 5 matches. He's at 26, he's one of the veterans and the leaders of this team now. He's played very well. Both these guys played very well. They've won in both foursomes and 4-ball, and they've won with different partners. And the only time that Sung Jae Im lost 2 years ago was when he was with Corey Connors, who just did not have himself a good week at all. So there's a lot to like about both those guys. Siwoo Kim beat Justin Thomas in the lead Sunday singles a couple of years ago. So I'm looking at those two guys, and really the internationals. The key for them is to cut into the huge advantage that the U.S. has in the foursomes. And Kim and Im have both won foursomes matches. So I like those two guys a lot. And I do like Hideki as well, but I wanted to go a little bit below the radar.
Ryan Andrade, let's have you go up next. International MVP pick, most points.
Yeah, I like the old man. I like Adam Scott plus
Ooh.
700. You can pretty much put him with whoever you want, either 4-ball or foursomes. And he's coming in with great form. He was his last 5 starts before the BMW Championship: second, T10, T18, T2, T4. He's clearly found something. His putting and short game have been absolutely amazing recently, which not necessarily the thing you think about Adam Scott with for his whole career, but those things have been dialed in. And I do actually like the fact that he went and played the BMW PGA Championship last week. It wasn't a great finish, but I think that's another little thing that deserves to be brought up is guys that either played in Napa or in Wentworth last week. I think they could just have a slight edge in terms of form. A lot of these guys haven't played in almost a month since the Tour Championship. So that's one more thing to look out for this week.
Yeah, we learned a very sharp lesson last year in Rome about playing leading up to the event. Does that make a difference for who you think is going to be the international MVP and most points there, Ryan Poole?
So what was that, Keith? Sorry, what was that question?
Who's going to have the most points on the international side?
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I'm going Tom Kim at 7-1. He was the heart and soul of this team back in 2022. And, he's going to play all 5 times. He's the youngest guy that's on the team. And I love his energy. And part of betting is supposed to be fun. And Kim's a easy guy to root for.
All right. Well, there's no doubt about that. Surely the tank engine is going to need to run for 5 matches and probably win 4 points to give the international side a chance in all of this. Now, I know the U.S. side is heavily favored. The international side is at home. They've been close the last couple times when the U.S. side's been on the road. Give me your team that's going to win and a possible finishing score for the matches. Len Hochberg, I'll go with you first. Who's going to win and what's going to be the score?
Yeah, I think the United States will win. I don't think either team is very strong 1 through 12, but the top of the U.S. team is just so powerful. 5 top 10 players in the world. Hideki, the only top 10 on the international team. As for a score, I do think that the fans and the setup and all the things that go with being a home team are valuable and will keep the score close. So I'm going to say 16.5, 13.5 for the United States, a 3-point victory.
Ryan Andrade, who wins and possible points?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really, really close one. I think just like this course setup, I think it favors a lot of the international players a little bit better than the Americans. I think it's going to be the U.S. is going to have a somewhat comfortable lead after all the teams, the twosomes playing together, and then when we get to singles, I think the internationals are going to have a big comeback, but not quite enough. I think it's going to be 15.5 to 14.5.
Ooh. All right, Ryan Poole, who do you have winning, and what's the points?
Yeah, I also have U.S. by this much, 15.5 to 14.5. I have very little confidence in Jim Furyk based on his captain's picks. I don't think that I think there's going to be some questionable pairings. I think he's going to trot Max Homa out there too often. Clearly he's not into the analytics or anything like that. But at the end of the day, the U.S. just has a little too much talent, especially at the top, in my opinion, to get beat.
You know what? Furyk in France does scare me. But I feel like Furyk a couple weeks ago with the F-bombs and getting all fired up about wanting to win this so badly, maybe he's learned a lesson or two. I think he's going to roll out Scotty, Xander, and Colin 5 times each. And if he does that, well, so should Zach, but we're all sitting here always wondering what they're going to do. It should be really simple. Scotty Scheffler plays 5 times. Xander Schauffele plays 5 times. Patrick Cantlay plays 5 times. Will that happen? God, I hope so. And if it does, then it's USA 17-13. Book it. And then we're all thinking about the next time we can get together, which will probably be, I don't know, the Players' Championship in March. But until then, right, after this week's over, no matter what happens, everyone's going to start to build up to Bethpage. So let's have fun for a second before I get us out of here, right? We all know Scotty's going to be on that team. We all know Rory's going to be on the European side when we get to the Ryder Cup next September, a year from now. But give me a sleeper pick that you think that isn't necessarily on anyone's radar that will make one of those 2 teams and make it very interesting for us to talk about when we're doing this a year from now. I'm going to start with you, Ryan Poole.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, good young up and coming players. You think of like the Luke Clantons, it's still probably too early for someone like him. I like Austin Eckroat. I think he often gets overlooked among this young, crop of young Americans. He's only 25 years old. He kind of reminds me of Victor Hovland a little bit, another Oklahoma State golfer. I know that's a little bit of a reach, but really kind of struggles with the short game, with the chipping. If he can, make some improvements there, he's a good driver. He's a good iron player. He won this year in his sophomore year on tour. He's going to be locked into the signature events next year. If he can, perhaps win one of those, I wouldn't be shocked to see him make that leap into being on next year's Ryder Cup team.
Ooh, I like that choice. Speaking of young guns, I'm going to jump in here real quick. I'm going to offer up New York's own Cam Young. All right. Here's a guy that grew up in that area, has plenty of experience on that golf course. I think Cam Young, by his standards, hasn't really reached his own expectations. There's a lot of pressure there. And I think he's going to perform next year in signature events and beyond. And I think he's going to set himself apart. I don't know that he'll make it on points, but with all the experience there in the New York City area and handling those crowds and the way that he hits the tee ball at a place like Bethpage Black, I think there's no doubt that he could find himself on that team with a Northeast captain who's picking guys that have a lot of familiarity with the courses in that area. Len Hochberg, who would you select as your sleeper pick for Bethpage Black?
Fun fact, if the Ryder Cup was being picked today, Billy Horschel would be an automatic pick. He is in 6th place. So really interesting there. I'm going to go to the other side. I was looking at the U.S. side. I think everybody's going to go on the U.S. side. So I'll be a little bit contrarian. And there's a young player named Tom McKibben, the Northern Irishman, very young. He's really shown a lot at the DP World Tour. We may see a lot of him next year. He's currently in the top 10 on the DP World Tour points list. If he stays in the top 10, we will see him next year. We've seen Luke Donald try and take young guys and surround them with veterans and get them ready to keep the pipeline going. We did that with Hochberg and Hochberg. And so Tom McKibben may be the latest because Luke Donald will be back again for Bethpage, and we'll see what happens with young Tom.
Ryan Andrade, who's your sleeper pick for Bethpage Black?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the U.S. side, and I'm going to go with Davis Thompson. I think he had a great year this year, and I honestly thought at one point, he might be a sleeper for the President's Cup this year. He got his first one at the John Deere Classic. He had a bunch of other high finishes at a bunch of different style courses. He's 35th in the data golf rankings. He was 12th on the PGA Tour in strokes gained total, and he didn't lose strokes in any category. Like he really doesn't have any weaknesses. He can hit it a long ways, which obviously is going to play well with the setup where thing is going to take place at Bethpage. You're going to have thick rough and just try to bomb it as far down there and hack it out and do whatever you can. And I think he would he would really fit that pretty well. I think one other guy I think you can also throw out there is Nick Dunlap. I think he's. I would have loved to see him as a choice for the President's Cup this year. I think he was certainly inconsistent this year, but I mean, the dude thought he was going to be playing college golf, in January, and then he ended up winning as an amateur in Palm Springs. So, and then, on top of that, he went and got another one later in the season. So, I think next year he'll start to put a lot more consistency together, but the upside is clearly there for a guy like him.
Well, Thompson would be an interesting guy in a Ryder Cup because he does not say 2 words to anybody.
That's true. Very true.
Much like a couple of his fellow Georgia alums, Harmon and Henley, who are here, who aren't the most talkative guys either. And they certainly hit the fairway. How about that for a little bit of a foursomes pairing? Wouldn't that be a good one this week, guys?
So absolutely.
Sure. I'm down for it.
Stick to golf. Stick to golf. No chatter.
Yeah, stick to the golf. All right. Well, I tell you what, everyone. Thanks for joining us for these 4 window sets on the major events this year. I hope you enjoyed them as much as we enjoyed giving them to you. We'll be back next year. Looks like it'll be around March in time for the Players' Championship. The 4 of us will be back. But in the meantime, you're always going to get Len and I every Tuesday at 11:15 a.m. Eastern Time, 8:15 Pacific Time for the RotoWire Rundown. The Sanderson Farms is next week. You up for it next week, Len?
I'm enjoying the extra 15 minutes of sleep. I'll tell you that, Keith. That's important to me. So, yes, looking forward to it.
Well, I expect you to bring the heat for the Chicken Championship next week, all right? So I'll see you then. And Ryan's, I'm sure we'll be talking more in the offseason to make these rundowns even better. Guys, let's go USA.